So we're now drawing towards the end of August, and I was down here last night doing a bit of watering inside the Polyhouse, and I collected a few veg, and it just reminded me of how wonderful this time of year is, that you can just come down to the allotment or garden if you've got one and just pick whatever veg you want, and they're all completely fresh. So what I'm going to show you today is a quick tour of the allotment of what's cropping at the moment and what's going on. It's a little bit untidier than usual because we've had a family wedding and that's taken up an awful lot of time. Nothing that a few days of hard work won't sort out, but nevertheless there's still loads and loads of vegetables here that are ready for harvest. So I'll take you around the allotment and just show you what's happening now toward the end of August. And if you do like the video, don't forget to give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and a few recipe ideas, then don't forget to press the subscribe button. So we'll start off in this corner of the allotment. This is my herb bed, and this is going to be replaced next year. Not replaced, I'm going to move the herbs nearer to the Polyhouse, build a little frame for them, because this is actually under a tree here, and this part of the allotment is the only corner that gets affected by lack of water and excess shading compared to the rest. So herbs are okay, but I'm going to make sure that I plant some vegetables that are not affected by the tree. Over here we have a sunflower, and this was given to me as a plant by one of the allotment holders, Andy, and originally it was snapped off by the birds. I think they'd gone onto the top of it and broken the stem, but now it's produced another stem and looks like it's going to flower, so we'll see what happens there. Here we have French beans, climbing French beans, and as you can see, lots of them to pick. I've already picked loads of these. Absolutely loads on there. Some of these I'll take home over the next week or two, and then some I'm going to leave on for seeds. These are seeds that I collect myself year on year, and from memory I believe they're a variety called Cobra. But as you can see, there's loads of French beans on there, more than enough, and these can be frozen as well, so if I want to I can take these home, blanch them, and then put them in the freezer. This looks a little bit untidy. This is the Mangetout here. You can see they've all gone yellow, and that's on purpose, because now I'll be able to take these pods here, and then when I open them up I'll be able to get the seeds out of them. You can probably just make out there's some peas in there, and they'll be the seeds for next year. So I'll just leave them on another couple of weeks and then let them dry out. Next we have our cucumber. These are climbing cucumber. Again, I've mentioned these in previous videos, brilliant cucumbers, Market More 76. I've had loads of cucumber already. You can see cucumbers that are actually on there, on the stems. Everywhere you look there's cucumbers, and these are lovely cucumbers. They don't grow as big as the ones that you might grow in a Polyhouse. The ones that you might get in the supermarkets are very, very long ones, but they taste exactly the same, and in fact I think they taste better because they're fresher. But again, wonderful variety. With these cucumbers, you have to make sure that you water them at the roots. So if you get in periods of dry weather, you need to take the rows off your watering can and actually water right down at the stems, because they will dry out very, very quickly. There's a little bed here which I've just bypassed and not really mentioned, is the carrots, Autumn King 2. They'll be cropping later in the year, and I've got another variety of spring onions in here. I think they're called White Lisbon, but I've had spring onions already. Before we go into any more veg, I'll just show you my compost heap. Put loads of stuff in here. It's building up quite nicely. It's amazing how much stuff a compost heap takes. There is a video on the channel showing you how I created my first compost heap and what type of things to put in it. So probably next month I'll be emptying the left hand bay, because there's a little bit in there, and I think I'm going to put that on top of my rhubarb when all the leaves are off it, and I'm going to turn this bay here into this bay here, and that will do two things. One, it will put air into the compost mix, which helps the compost process, and also it empties the bay out ready for next year's compost. Here we have the second sowing of beetroot. I'll show you the first sowing in a minute. They're nearly all gone because we love beetroot. These are Renova. I mentioned these in previous videos before, so I'd imagine maybe in a month and a half they'll be ready to crop. Here we have these lettuce here are Little Gems. I've had loads of lettuce this year, very pleased with them. I've had different sowings. The first variety of lettuce I used this year were a variety called Lakeland. and I grew them in the Polyhouse. And I'm going to put another sowing of Lakeland in next week to be used over the September, October, November period. And as you can see, there's plenty of little gem for me to harvest and use here. Over here we have the Sweetcorn, and I do like Sweetcorn. I like the way it grows. I like the fact that it grows so tall. And that will be ready for, there's two sowings there, which is hard to tell the difference now, but the ones on the left, which are slightly taller, with the first sowing, I'd imagine they're going to be ready to harvest in 3 to 4 weeks. So what we'll do is just where the tops of the sweet corn are, we'll peel them back slightly and just take a peek at the cobs, these bits here I'm talking about. So what I will do is peel them back just very, very gently, and just have a look at the actual cobs and see if they're yellow. I don't know if we can see here. No, they're not quite ready yet. You can probably see they're still a little bit white, so we'll just put that back and then give that another couple of weeks and then check them again to see if they're ready for harvesting. Then we have some leeks here. I've got 2 rows of leeks just in here. They're growing quite well. They're a variety called Musselborough, and again they were given to me by an allotment holder friend, Andy, and they'll go nicely through the winter. These here are absolutely amazing. These are kale under the green netting. Let me take the netting off a little bit. So here under this netting is the kale. I'm just having a little sneak peek through the netting. This is a variety called dwarf curled leaves, or dwarf green curled, or something like that. But there's nothing dwarf about them. We've had some of this already, and it really is amazing. It grows so easily. And as you can see, I've got it under the green netting to protect it, but there's lots of lovely curly leaves there ready for us to pick. As you can see, this whole bay is full of kale, like I've just shown you. Next to the kale we have the spinach, and again spinach is one of them things this year that have just been brilliant for me. I've never had much success with spinach, and everybody tells me it's easy to grow, but to be honest I've always struggled with it. I don't know why, but this year it's been brilliant, and I've had so much. And literally just by cutting off the leaves when you want to use them, it just grows back again. You get more and more. So there's about 7 or 8 plants of spinach there, and it's great. It's on salad, and my daughter's a vegan, so she'll be making spinach curries and all sorts of other stuff with that. So that's going to give me another load of crop over the next few weeks. Here we have these nearly ready to pick. These are onion sets here. Can't remember the variety. I normally have a variety called Stuttgarter, but I don't think these are Stuttgarter. I can't remember. I should be better at labelling, shouldn't I? I think virtually every crop I go to, I'm trying to remember the variety. But these are onion sets, and next year, because I will have a little bit more time, I'm going to try and grow my onions from seeds. So that's great. And then we come over to this bed over here, more green netting, and we've got Brussel sprouts, which you can see through there. They're growing okay, they're healthy enough, and the green netting does make a massive difference, because anybody who puts sprouts out and doesn't put netting on will know that the leaves get eaten really, really easily, because everything seems to like them. So I'm hoping that they're going to be ready for Christmas. I'd love to be able to have my own Brussels sprouts on my Christmas dinner. So let's see what happens with these. I have got some more Brussels sprouts which are a little bit later in the Polyhouse, which is a bit of an experiment. I'll show you those in a minute. Here are the cabbage. Again, they're growing really well as well. What amazes me, is I've got this netting, which is scaffold netting, but somehow I've still got some eaten leaves. Not so many, because as you can see the cabbage looks pretty healthy. Looks really, really good, but on the perimeter they have been slightly eaten. But there seems to be again a nice little heart on them there. So I'm really looking forward to having those. Here we have the last of the beetroot. This whole, where you got this all weeds now, so I'm going to dig all this tomorrow, so all this will come out. But this was all full of beetroot, and I've used it all apart from 3 or 4, which I'll use over the next couple of days. And I've got that later sowing, which I've just shown you, and a few in the Polyhouse. These are the Swedes. Again, just done a video about Swedes to show you how absolutely chuffed to bits I am with these this year, that they've grown really successfully. They've bulbed up really, really well, and I think that's because of the way I've netted them. Here's my 2 bays of strawberries. I've had loads of strawberries, as you know from previous videos. So this time of year you'll see them throwing runners, and I think it's more prevalent in this one over here. You'll see these runners everywhere. Now these are going to be next year's plants. I am going to give a tidy up to these beds of strawberries, take the weeds out, and to just make them nice and tidy, so that the nutrients go into the plants and not into the weeds. And also as well, if you have got strawberries, people often make the mistake with strawberries, and when they fruited, so the fruiting season is finished, they don't water them. And that's actually a mistake, because if you want to produce healthy plants for next year, you want to put as much nutrients or energy into the plant, and therefore I would water these strawberry plants, even though they're not going to fruit again this year. As it happens, over the last few days it hasn't really mattered because it's rained, so it's done it for me. Here we have 2 bays of potatoes, and these are just ready to harvest now. Now people ask, when do you harvest potatoes? When they start dying off is a simple answer, just like this. When they get to this stage, they aren't going to grow anymore and need to be taken out the ground. These are varieties called Desiree. You'll see the video on my channel which shows you how I planted them. These are going to be great. I always grow Desiree. Fantastic variety of potatoes, and they've never really let me down, so I'm very hopeful that I'll get a good harvest. And I'll do a video over the next week or 2 when I harvest the first potatoes. Now this has been a bit of a shocker this year, these courgettes. I had loads of courgettes, but for some reason they are sour, and I've read up about this. It is something that happens when the plants start to react to where they think they're getting attacked, and the courgettes are that bitter that they just can't be used. So unfortunately this year I'm going to have to dig all of these courgettes up and throw them away. Here we have another cucumber plant here and here, and then I've got a later sowing just here, just behind them, of the French beans. There's about half a dozen plants there, so you can see they're climbing now up the fencing. So when the ones at the back there are completely harvested and let them go to seed, I am going to have a later sowing of French beans. These are butternut squash, and they are starting to produce squash now. I wonder if we can find any. Yeah, can you see the squash here? And I've got 5 squash plants all together, and I'm estimating I might get 10 to 12 squash, which ain't bad. They do take up a lot of space, squash, so you know, if you can get 10 to 12, get 2 per plant, I think that's probably a bit worthwhile. Then we've got celery here. These are a variety called Octavius, and what's interesting about the celery is that at the same time I planted some. Well, it was all planted at the same time in pods when the seeds were sown, but I put half of the plants in the polyhouse and half outside, and the ones in the polyhouse have completely outgrown these, so I'm going to leave these in, and hopefully they'll be okay for the winter. But I'll show you the size of the celery we've had, and we've been using for over a month now from the polyhouse. Absolutely amazing, really beautiful celery. So I'm just walking over to the back of the allotment now, taking you past the strawberries to the soft fruit area. So here we have the rhubarb, and I've had so much rhubarb this year. I think I'm going to get another picking of this, probably over the next day or 2. You don't want to sort of pick rhubarb too late, because it can sometimes get a little bit bitter. Very, very healthy, lots of water. And as I've said, over this winter, I'm going to mulch the plants once the leaves and the stems have all gone. So loads of rhubarb. Made loads of rhubarb ginger and orange crumbles, all in our freezer, given loads away. Absolutely lovely. Here are the raspberries, and again, so many raspberries this year. And the stage of the year now where I'm going to get a second crop, which is why I think I've definitely got a mixed variety here, because I had loads a few months ago, and there's loads more on now. So these seem to be the autumn ones, which are growing at the moment, and you can see there's loads on ready to ripen up. And I had made loads of jam, and you can see that from previous videos as well, and crumbles from the strawberry. This area here I've left alone this year. It's a bit of a fallow area. This is where we used the area when we was building the polyhouse earlier this year, and I've just left it, so this will be all dug up, and this is where I'm going to have all my potatoes next year. And finally we come to the polyhouse. Remember, this is a new polyhouse, only built earlier this year, so really from next year I'll be able to start to plan it all properly. So I've sort of not really thought about too much about where everything's going in here this year, just to get stuff in. I've got tomatoes, which are not looking very good at the moment. The honest truth is I've probably neglected them a little bit because of all the other stuff that's been going on with the wedding and stuff like that. I'm not too worried about that, but what I do want to show you is some of the stuff that's growing over here. Quite experimental really. I've got 2 blueberry bushes over in the corner, and then we've got another sowing of beetroot here, which has got to be slightly weeded, and there's a few onions just at the back which you can maybe just slightly see next to the blueberry. It's this here, and this here is parsnips. Now I've grown them inside. I have got some outside between the courgettes which you can't see until the courgettes are removed, but look how they look 10 times better than the parsnips that are outside, and they were put in probably about 3 or 4 weeks later. So that tells me that for next year I've decided I'm going to reduce the amount of tomatoes that I grow and utilise the space in here for growing more veg like parsnips. And next to them I've got a few sprouts. They're slightly eaten as well, so even in the polyhouse, because the doors and the windows are open in here, I'm going to need to protect these, so I'll net them over. And these are the celery I was telling you about. This is the celery compared to what's outside. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful celery, really lovely, fantastic fresh flavour, and we've already had loads of it. All this whole bed here was full of it, and it's all been dug out. And now I've got this left, got about half left in here. I've got a variety of onions here. Again, these are Buckinghamshire Champion or something like that. Just put a few in just to try them out. And here, which I'm going to plant out next few days, is spring cabbage, which were given to me by an allotment here friend, and some leeks and some radish. And over here I have my peppers, and they're starting to flower and starting to get a few peppers on them now. You can just see just a few peppers starting to develop. They're under the shelving, so I think I'm going to take some of these tomatoes out, to be honest, put the shelving back, and then start thinking of putting a few winter veg in. So that then is the allotment in August. As you can see, loads of veg I've already harvested, loads to harvest, and then it's going to be a case of digging up and prepping the ground for next year, and where I can, putting in winter veg. So that's the end of the tour. As you can see, loads going on, plenty of vegetables that I'm harvesting at the moment, loads to harvest, and still lots of work to do, ready for planting winter veg and getting ready for next year. There's always things to do in the allotment. So if you've got any comments about what you're doing, what's growing well for you, maybe what's not growing so well, put them in the comments below and share them with us. It's good to share our experiences so that we can all learn from each other. And if you do like the video, don't forget to give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg and a few recipe ideas, then don't forget to press the subscribe button. And I'll see you all on the next video.